Ethan had always been skeptical of ghost stories, dismissing them as mere fiction. But when he moved into the abandoned house on Willow Street, he found himself questioning everything he once believed. The first night was uneventful, save for the eerie silence that enveloped the house. But as the days passed, strange things began to happen. Whispers echoed through the hallways at night, their voices hushed and unintelligible. Objects moved on their own, shifting ever so slightly when no one was looking. One evening, Ethan decided to investigate. Armed with only a flashlight, he followed the whispers down to the basement. The air grew colder with each step, and the moment he reached the bottom, the whispers ceased. The silence was suffocating. As he turned to leave, the door slammed shut. Panic surged through him as he pounded on the door, but it wouldn't budge. Then, out of the darkness, a voice whispered his name. It was a voice he recognized, his late grandmother. Terrified, he turned to see a shadowy figure standing at the far end of the room. Its form was indistinct, shifting like smoke, but its eyes burned like embers in the darkness. "You shouldn't be here," the voice murmured. The room suddenly came alive with shadows, twisting and writhing as if in agony. Ethan screamed as the figure rushed toward him. The next morning, he was found lying unconscious at the top of the basement stairs. He never spoke of what happened that night, but he moved out the very next day. And though the house remains abandoned, some say if you listen closely at night, you can still hear the whispers calling his name. After moving out, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed him. At night, he would wake up drenched in sweat, feeling as though unseen eyes were watching him. Strange occurrences continued in his new apartment. Lights flickered, cold drafts swept through rooms, and sometimes he would hear that same whispered voice calling his name. Determined to get answers, he researched the history of the Willow Street house. He found that in the early 1900s, a woman named Margaret Holloway had lived there. She was rumored to be a reclusive witch who had vanished mysteriously, leaving only her diary behind. Local legends said her spirit never truly left the house. Ethan tracked down the diary, now kept in a small historical archive. As he flipped through its brittle pages, he read about Margaret's experiments in communicating with spirits. Her final entry chilled him to the bone. The shadows whisper secrets of the beyond. But I fear I have let something in, something that does not wish to leave. Determined to put an end to his torment, Ethan returned to the abandoned house. This time he came prepared with salt, candles, and a recording device. As he stepped inside, the temperature plummeted, the whispers grew louder, almost excited. Ethan set up a circle of salt around himself and lit the candles. He began to recite an incantation he had found in Margaret's diary, hoping to banish whatever presence lingered. The air grew thick, the shadows pulsed, and suddenly the figure reappeared closer this time. "You shouldn't have come back," he hissed. Ethan felt an unseen force pushing against him, trying to break the protective circle. He continued chanting, his voice shaking. The entity shrieked, a sound so inhuman it set chills down his spine. The room darkened, and for a moment, Ethan thought he might not make it out alive. Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything went still. The candles flickered out, and the oppressive weight lifted. Ethan gasped for air, realizing he was alone once more. He left the house for good that night, and as he drove away, He glanced in his rearview mirror. For a brief moment, he saw a pair of burning eyes staring back at him from the darkness. Even now, years later, Ethan avoids speaking of what happened. But deep down, he knows some doors once opened and never truly be closed.